Well, let's talk about the trade there in the old days.
Mm.
What trade was this over, and how was it conducted?
You see,
Mm,
in the old days, basically when these firms were opened in Singapore, I'm talking in the 40s and 50s, right?
mm,
There was a huge demand in India, for example, for betel nuts. Now, where did betel nuts come from? They came from Indonesia, to some extent from Malaysia.
mm, mm,
So these people provided a role by buying it locally and then shipping it to India, to Pakistan, and to Bangladesh. All right? All right. India required things like cloves. So where did the cloves come from? Zanzibar and Madagascar. But Zanzibar and Madagascar will not ship small quantities to India because, first of all, shipping problems, right? There were no proper shipping between Zanzibar and India. So Zanzibar would then ship the goods to Singapore. And then from Singapore, part of it would go to Indonesia for the credit industry and part of it will go to India. So there was a role for these middlemen. Do you understand?
yeah.
A lot of the middlemen also played a role in the sense that, for example, Taiwan was banned by many countries in the world.
Mm,
But Taiwan was a big producer of yarn, yarn. So how did they buy the yarn? They bought the yarn via Singapore companies. Do you understand? Another thing, for example, let's take textiles. South Africa was banned.
mm,
So my father had a small role there. He would bring in the textiles from India and transship it in Singapore, calling it goods of Singapore origin, and ship it to South Africa. So Singapore middlemen had a role. Also, Singapore middlemen provided a financing role. For example, the banks in Singapore would provide financing, right? So my father could give credit to the importers in Middle East, to the
mm,
buyers in India. So 90-day draft against acceptance. So so we also had a small financing role here. Our interest rates, I think, traditionally have been much lower than the importing countries. So we had a financing role too. So Singapore had a role, and
mm.
and transshipment, bringing goods into Singapore was cheap. You had the coolies available, everything available. All these levers of business are gone now. The port authority will kill you by the time you take the goods out and
Ah,
put it in a warehouse in Singapore and reship it. The port authority will have the profit. You won't have the profit. So, and the coolies have disappeared. Transport cost is so heavy. So, unless you are adding value, there is no point in bringing in unprocessed goods and shipping out unprocessed goods. Yeah, there's
mm,
no role at all. So it was a dying business, always been a dying business. And as I told you again, very important in this type of business is the relationships, right?
yeah.
So Kasing, you are a fellow Gujarati, so I trust you, right? So I'm in the producing center, so I'll say, okay, I send my goods to Kasing. Now in this century, now in 2025, I don't care if Kasing is Gujarati or what. I can't be bothered.
Mm,
You pay me, I give you, provided you pay me my price. Finish. End of story. You see. Otherwise, I ship direct to my buyers. So this is happening. You see. Look
right,
at
right.
yeah. Look, I was a very big peanut importer from
Mm,
China. Now the Chinese ship direct. I'm talking of mainland China. So where is the role for us? No role. No role. My father had a big role in cinnamon and star anise. He used to buy it from China. My father was one of the first to go to China in 1964. You
mm.
know, the Singapore government gave him special permission to go to China. So we were main importers of cinnamon and star anise. And guess who we sold it to? Pepsi Cola and Coca Cola. And then, of course, Nixon went along and met Mr. Mao, and then that was the end of the business for us. You see. So, Singapore's role slowly, and I don't think Singapore government minded that. I don't
Right.
think Singapore minded that because Singapore's political leaders already had a big vision. They already knew this will happen, so they also started to make changes. Look at the efficiency of our ports and everything. The big investment was made even before the business was there, right? And it's paying off now, ne? Paying off now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were, to be honest with you, a lot of us traders, even though we were trained overseas, etc., we were like frogs in a well. We couldn't see beyond the well, the walls of the
Right.
well. Yeah,
Right.
honestly.
Uh,
Some of us did, but not enough. Not enough.
but I think it's fascinating though to just go back to history and see how this system of trade
Mm.
uh, operated. Did your father teach you, the mechanics of it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, in Gujarati, we have a word which is a fantastic word. It's known as partar, partar, Perthar. That's the first thing my father taught me.
Mm,
Now, you know what's the meaning of partar?
no.
Let's say I'm in the pencil business. So I approach Stedler, right? And say, can I buy the pencils from you? So partar means the cost of bringing the pencils to Singapore, financing costs, shipping costs, unpacking it, putting it on your shelf. So how much does one pencil cost? That's the partar. Now, today, for example, if my father was alive and said, I want to bring in German pencils, he'll ask me, what's the partar?
Mm,
Then you turn around. The next question to me will be, what's the partar of bringing a pencil in from China? Then I'll tell him, oh, German pencils are quality better, but they'll cost 3 times more. My father will say, well, pencil, why must you pay 3 times more? You buy from China, the partar is much lower. So that's the first word he taught me, that, the cost must make sense.
mm.
So,
That,
these things were taught to us.
does
The
that mean
value,
value or cost? Value,
Yeah,
ah.
value. In the sense, value is associated with cost. Yeah,
Mm.
landed cost. The cost of offering it to somebody. Yeah.
I mean, did you ever get daunted, right, by the scale of this trade? All right, as you say, the places you mentioned, they are far away, and then you see the goods disappear over the horizon, right, and it's got to go to the destination. Were you ever worried?
No,
Uh, that,
because you see,
mm,
you are taught early,
mm,
very early, about assessing the what do you call it, the assessing the need and the quality of the customer. You're
mm,
taught very early. So I think, generally speaking, I must be honest with you, in spite of the high volume of business I did, I had frankly no bad debt. No bad debt. I had instances where payments were delayed or payments were not made, but the structure I created, I could recover my money. That means if you
right.
don't pay, you don't get the goods. End of story. If I may illustrate, can I
Mm.
give you an illustration?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, I bought a huge quantity of copra. You know what's copra, right?
Yeah,
Dried
yeah.
coconut. Yeah,
Mm,
I bought a shipload to ship to India. And the mistake I made was, instead of asking for letters of credit, I asked for draft against payment. So, of course, the Indian buyers told me, can you give credit? I said, no, no, I never give credit. You want credit, you go to your bank and get the money and get the credit. But I don't give credit. I changed the policy of my father. I never gave credit. I said cash or nothing. Okay. So when my ship arrived in Bombay, the copra market had declined. So this buyer said, "Oh, you haven't shipped copra. You have shipped us charcoal.
oh,
Just an excuse not to pay. See."
right, right.
So they're telling me, "Please cut your price." I said, "No, I won't cut my price. First, you pay my documents, then I cut my price." They said, "No." So my goods got discharged in India.
Mm,
Now, in those days, India's laws were very archaic. So, all kinds of procedures were required and all that. It took me 6 months. I refused to budge. My goods were lying in the Indian port for 6 months. I paid demurrage. You know what's demurrage, right? If you the port charges, I had to pay demurrage. I brought the copra back to Singapore, so I didn't lose money because God is great. When the copra came back to Singapore, the market has shot up, so I recovered everything. So
okay.
you see, the mistake I made was I had a whole bunch of buyers. If I had sold it just to one buyer, I could have easily solved the problem. But I wanted to also earn a bit extra. So if you charter a vessel and fill up the whole thing, then the freight is lower, and the cost of buying also is
Mm.
lower. So the greed took over, and I paid a bit of a penalty. You see,
Right.
so
6 months the copra. Were you stressed by that?
not really.
No, huh?
Uh,
Okay.
One
Okay.
thing about I must tell you again, this in business, nothing has ever stressed me.
Ah,
Uh,
really?
yeah, because somehow or other, I don't know. I always think there's a solution. There's a solution.
Would you agree that most Singaporeans today have no appetite for this?
No, I would agree with you. I agree.
Right. I mean, this thing about that it was charcoal. I mean, that's quite ridiculous, right? I mean, on
Yes,
your
yes.
part, right? Did you ever receive, like, metaphorically speaking, rocks in the shipment?
No, no, no.
No, huh? Okay.
No, you see, because charcoal when it's smoke dried looks like
Right.
charcoal. I mean,
Okay.
copra when it's smoke dried, because it's basically used for oil extraction, right? So it's very dark in color and all that. So it looks so it was just. But let me give you an example about the Gujarati community in this respect. When I shipped this copra to Bombay, right, my buyers were varied. They were not Gujaratis. They were all kinds of communities, right? So I
Mm.
had this problem. I had a similar problem in Pakistan. I shipped a shipload of copra, which I had bought from Intraco Singapore. You heard of Intraco, right?
Yes,
The
the
government company.
Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah, so Papua New Guinea, Intraco had an agency with Papua New Guinea. So this was not sun-dried, this was sun-dried copra. And I shipped it to Karachi. Unfortunately, due to some mistake or on the part of the shipper, partial copra was smoke dried. So my Pakistani buyers held back payment. Okay. So I flew to Pakistan, and my agent then called a meeting. Now, in Pakistan, all the buyers were Gujarati Muslims who had emigrated from Gujarat. Okay. So when I went into the meeting, Mr. Doshi pretended to know Urdu well and started speaking Urdu, but of course interspersed with Gujarati words. The chairman of the buyer, there were 7 buyers. The chairman looked at me and turned to me and says, "Why are you speaking Urdu? You are Gujarati, right?" So I said, "Yes, I'm Gujarati." "Oh, which town?" So I gave him the town. "Oh, my town is just next door. My parents were there." He told all the 7, "Pay his documents. This young man will settle our loss. Just pay the document." Then his next word to me was, "Hey, young man, when are you free for lunch or dinner?" So I spent 7 days in Karachi
Ah.
being hosted for lunch and dinner, lunch and dinner, lunch and dinner. I nearly died. Came back to Singapore. I negotiated with Intraco a compensation and paid them. So you see the
Ah.
difference again.
Yes.
The community took over, even though they are Gujarati Muslims who emigrated but their roots were Gujarati, and they straight away connected with me and straight away said, "No, no, 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 no argument, no fight, pay his documents. Trust him.
Right.
I trust him," he said.